What's up guys, I'm Phoenix Master 1 and welcome to my refined review and builds guide for the Choose Your Legend 6 refines, including Brave Chrom, Brave Seliph, Brave Tiki, and Brave Female Byleth. We also have refines for New York Keaton and Legendary Female Byleth and also Eitri. So let's start with Chrom, who I think wins a lot in this batch, and when he came out, he was definitely one of the units that was best from his batch. Seliph was immediately the best unit, but then after a while Seliph fell off. And as we started to get more bonus status effects, Brave Chrom was easily able to establish himself as the best Choose Your Legend 6 unit. And that doesn't really change even with this weapon refine that doesn't really have a lot of new things, but it's gonna be solid enough. So his preferred weapon Gidrifol did give him minus in special cooldown and also effective damage against armors, which does help against the near saviors and a lot of the really strong armors that we've got, because Chrom is able to outstat them and also hit them really hard to make it matter. And he's able to get extra stats in the combat depending on 10 plus X. So now he's able to get more stats in the combat, and he already had the uncapped stats out of the bonus status effects and the penalty status effects active on him ×2. So this makes his ceiling high because there's just so much status effects, and he himself is able to inflict the isolation status on himself, and now with the weapon refine he gets 2 extra status effects, so those are just going to be adding for his extra stats. And now with the weapon refine he's able to get 40% damage reduction on the first attacks of the enemies, including the brave hits. He didn't really have the brave damage reduction before, and he also got the special cooldown +1 per attack if he had any kind of bonus effect active on him. So this allowed him to easily trigger specials and also function as a Gale Force unit. And now with the weapon refine he has got a selfish link effect. I say selfish because only Chrom is able to benefit out of this and not his other allies, which are going to be participating in targeting him or being targeted by his assist skill. So he's able to get the 50% damage reduction piercing status, which we have seen before on Legendary Camilla, and also the dull ult status, which we have seen on Valentine Lucina. So Chrom doesn't really need to run any kind of loud skill, and 50% damage reduction piercing is not really the easiest to outsource. So having this already in his weapon is so helpful for something like ether raids and also for summoner duels, just for being self-sufficient and functioning as a really good melee nuke. And then he has got true damage based on number of bonus status effects active on him ×4, and the max limit for this is going to be 16. So that's a lot of true damage, and he's going to be already hitting hard with all of the stats that he's able to get, and this kind of true damage just solidifies his place as an amazing melee nuke. And he's also able to get 7 HP healing after the combat, which honestly I never like, because on these kinds of Gale Force units the healing is going to be pushing you out of the Wings of Mercy range, and I don't really have Wings of Mercy 4 on all of my Gale Force teams, so this is going to be a bit annoying thing if you used him in Ether Raid's offense. But outside of that, this is going to be helping him function in the mixed phase. Brave Chrom of course has a fate changed, which is easily one of the best assist skills in the entire game, which allows him to copy any kind of status effects of his allies. And like I said, we have a lot of visible status effects now, and a lot of units give many status effects at the same time. So he's able to copy a lot of them, and any of those status effects are going to be empowering him. So overall I think that Brave Chrom was already in a really good place even before this weapon refine, and now with this he's going to be solidifying his place in many of the summoner duels teams and ether raids teams because of his action economy and what he brings to the table as a melee cavalier. And even though this is not anything too new, this is still just building up on what he already did best. So if you're going to be building him up after this weapon refine, you could still function with his base kit. If you don't have no quarter, then that's fine, you can still use Luna, as you're going to be getting that 50% damage reduction piercing with his weapon. And Sir Sparrow is not really all that great, but still it can function, and it can run attack speed clash or even attack speed catch as the Sacred Seal. And Infinity Speed Tactic is a bit annoying compared to a lot of the modern skills to function, but it does allow him to copy the null follow-up status, which is something that he was missing out of this kind of weapon. And if you have a rearmed Lucina, then he's able to get all of the premium skills from her, and also you're able to dupe no quarter. And even though he already has damage reduction piercing, I feel like no quarter is still good to have because you get the full damage reduction piercing, which is never a bad thing. So that overlap isn't really a big deal and he can get attack speed clash for its debuff neutralization, and in case he copies any kind of extra movement, this is going to be working really well. And he can also get speed defense snag 4, and he's easily one of the best snag 4 users in the entire game because he gets another action after his assist. So this allows you to debuff the enemy, and you can also run alarm defense resistance to get the Kanto status. And again, that is going to be another status effect which is going to be helping him nuke better and get more stats. And at higher investment and max investment, you could try and run him with attack speed XL so that he can get that flat damage reduction. And again, if you copy +1 movement, then you're going to be getting even more value. And a lot of times he's going to be run with Brave Seliph or any kind of +1 movement Cavalier like Brave Alphonse. So it's not the hardest thing for him to do. And Speed Defense Near Trace 4 is an amazing slot B skill for him because it allows you to get Kanto 2 at the bare minimum. And this also adds to the true damage that he's able to get in the combat. So it's a fantastic skill, and you can also run inside attack speed in your slot C, and this is going to be giving you the inside status. So it's a bit more player face focused, but getting another visible status effect is really good for him. And he could be used in Eitri L's offense as a Gale for CNET, but you're going to be needing Wings of Mercy for allies, and the healing is going to be pushing him out of the range of Wings of Mercy 3, and it's going to be a bit anti-synergetic. Still, you can use him with a lot of modern Gale Force units that can have multiple actions. So even a non-warping Gale Force is something you could try and do. Just don't reposition Brave Felix because he doesn't really want any kind of assist to be used on him, even though Chrom is able to copy the +1 movement out of him. So you could try and run defense for Smoke 3 so that you can set up Pathfinder and maybe make way for your allies like Freya, for example, with attack speed wild to go in and Gale Force. So it's definitely an option if you're really trying to use him in Eitri L's offense, but his Gale Force potential, because of the healing, is a bit shaky, so you'll always have to keep that in mind. And if you have way too many merges, then it is going to be getting harder for you. And you can also use him in Summoner Duels, and he's always going to be having a place in there because of his action economy and how he's able to copy the Pathfinder status from an ally of Dagger. So that way you're able to have 3 Pathfinder status effects on your team, and that just threatens a lot of area. So you're going to be taking a bit more player phase approach there, and Flared Sparrow is going to be helping you with the pre-combat damage and also the flame terrain, which does help you against the ice terrain and just getting rid of that. And you can also run Potent 4 in the slot B. A lot of people did use him with Flow Desperation, but it's a bit easier to get now with Desperation from Firestorm Dance or from Fallen Ursula, who's also a really good partner with Brave Chrom. So Potent 4 for the extra oomph is going to be helping you. And Alarm attack speed could be run so that you can have the Kanto 1 status. Trying to have any kind of Kanto either with the Near Trace skill or an Alarm skill is something you should be doing on Brave Chrom, absolutely. And then you could go all in with the offenses with Blade Session or Attack Speed Clash. And because he's able to make use of a lot of the visible status effects, he's one of the better units to use with Attack Speed Prime, even though it has kind of fallen off nowadays. But still, if you're trying to function in the mixed phase, then this could be run. And Attack Speed Link 4 is also amazing slot B skill that gives him the true damage and also the Kanto 1 status. And like I said, you want to have some kind of Kanto with him. And because of the special charges of his weapon, you're able to easily trigger Ether. And Panic Smoke 4 is one of the options you can try and run so that he can have the foe penalty doubler effect and also panic the enemies. And this way he's able to have 4 status effects all by his own. So in some kind of scenario where maybe he's not able to get the support out of his allies, you're still going to be able to trigger the prime scale to its full effect, and chances are that if you're using Brave Chrom, you're probably going to be using allies with a lot of visible status effects. Brave Seliph was a force to be reckoned with as a 4 movement Cavalier, and he just hit really hard when he came out, but over the time he kind of fell off because of speed creep and not being able to double a lot of the enemies. But being a 4 movement Cavalier, he always had his uses competitively. So Holy Tide Trierfing did give him minus in special cooldown, and it does have the fixed Kanto 2 built in, and now he's able to get plus 16 to all of his stats, which is welcome because like I said, speed creep was annoying to Brave Seliph, and he did get true damage based on X, which is the clash distance that he covered before engaging in combat, times 10% of foe's defense. So this scales based on the defense of the enemy, which helps you a lot because a lot of the bulkier enemies are going to be getting hit really hard by Seliph. and you also have the Miracle once per combat, so this allowed him to function as a pretty nice Wings of Mercy beacon for something like Eitri L's offense, and just for the survival and retreating, this was a good thing for Summoner duels. But now, of course, we do have Fatal Smoke 4, and now with the weapon refine, he's able to get 50% damage reduction piercing, which is great to have. And then he gets a better version of Attack Speed XL, so you get that flat damage reduction on foes first attack in both phases, and if they trigger a special, you get another round of flat damage reduction, and the max cap for both of the instances is going to be 12. So this is really good for him as a miracle unit for surviving, and keep in mind that this could be stacked up with Attack Speed XL as an actual slot A skill. So having this built in his weapon does allow his flat damage reduction ceiling to be pretty high than most of the Cavaliers. And then finally, they have got the 7 HP healing after the combat. But in the case of Seliph, it actually does help with the miracle that he has got. He's not going to be able to completely loop it, so he's going to be needing some kind of other healing, but that's not really all that hard to outsource nowadays because a lot of units can give you that kind of healing support. So this does help towards that. So overall, this weapon refine doesn't really address a lot of his weaknesses as someone who has used Brave Seliph so much, because he needed even more speed nowadays, and he also needed some kind of tempo effect built in the weapon, or some kind of special charges so that he could trigger specials even more easily. But still, this does help him function as a Miracle Cavalier and be a lot more annoying with the flat damage reduction that could be stacked up with Attack Speed XL, and that is going to be the best slot A skill that he could try and run on him. And the 50% damage reduction piercing is also good because he doesn't really completely depend on no quarter for getting his damage reduction piercing, which is really important as a melee nuke, which Seliph is always going to be having a role in because of having the 4 movement and null follow-up and miracle that he gets. And he's in a really unique position, and even though his weapon refine is not anything mind-blowing, it's still pretty decent, and I do like it. And if you're trying to build him up after the weapon refine, then you could try and run him with Attack Speed Clash and simply double that up with the slot A skill that he comes with, and again Luna is going to be fine. I don't really think that he has the best emblem effect yet in the game. You could try and run Emblem Celica or even Emblem Marth if you want to, but for a lot of builds, he just needs like an other emblem effect that maybe we get in the future. And if you're going to be investing even more into him, then you need to have a Brattle Sharina that he could fodder for Attack Speed XL and Potent 4. So this allows him to hit harder with the Potent follow-up attack, and Double XL is really good because in the player phase, if the enemy triggers a special, then you're able to get up to 48 flat damage reduction, which is quite a lot. And even if they don't trigger any kind of special of theirs, you're still able to get 24 flat damage reduction in the player phase, which is really good with everything that he's able to do and threaten a lot of the area with his 4 movement. And again, just like with Chrom, no quarter is still gonna be the best special to be run because you wanna get that full damage reduction piercing, and even though there's a bit of an overlap, it doesn't really matter in the long run, and it's still a good special. And even though Potent 4 is a pretty nice slot B skill, I feel like the best slot B skill for him is going to be Assassin Strike. So this is going to be giving you even more true damage based on foe's defense, which works really well with this weapon, and it also has the pre-combat damage, which is more or less countered by Breath of Life 4. So we're mainly running this for the extra true damage, and no quarter could be run with Emblem Marth so that it's a 1 cooldown special that you could pre-charge, and then you could trigger it twice in a single round of combat that he's sure going to be able to survive because of all of the flat damage reduction. So Attack Speed XL and Assassin Strike is a really good combo for him, and if you're going to be using him in Summoner duels, then I feel like you need to run an AoE build on him. Now, even though he doesn't really get the true damage from his weapon added into the AoE special, it's still a really good build to run because of the sheer amount of threat range that Seliph has got on many of the cav-friendly maps and the pressure he's able to exert. And because he has got the fixed counter 2 in his weapon, even against counter control, you're going to be able to retreat 2 spaces if you run hit and run, which is a really cheap budget skill, but it works surprisingly well. So at higher level of Summoner duels, this is definitely going to be a build you're going to be seeing on Brave Seliph. And this weapon refine doesn't really add anything offensively to this build, but still it gives you more sustainability because of the flat damage reduction. So even after squeezing your defenses with Verge of Death and Life and Death Sacred Seal, he's still going to be able to survive a lot of things and you'll be surprised. You can also use him in Eitri L's offense as a Gale Force Cavalier for initiation because of Miracle in his weapon, so a lot of times he could fall into the low HP range to trigger Wings of Mercy of his allies, and Seliph really needs a lot of extra speed, so Lot Speed Defense 4 is something you could try and run, and I still like Attack Speed Clash 4 for its debuff neutralization, so that could be run, and it definitely is a bit painful to run Heavy Blade in 2024, but unfortunately he didn't really get the special charges effect, so this is something you'll have to do with the support of Asker and hopefully trigger Gale Force. You can also run Quicken Pulse, but with the time that I've used him a lot as a Gale Force initiator, I would run into these guard enemies and Heavy Blade would help me against them more than Quicken Pulse, where you would not get any kind of special charges against them. So it depends on what you're trying to do and the Sacred Seals on your other units, and I fail to see a lot of big use cases for him now that we have Brave Felix as an insane Gale Force initiator who's immune to any kind of traps. But still, if you really want to use Brave Seliph, then this is also something you can try and do. Brave Tiki had a really tough time when she came out, but over the time she did get some of the skills that she was able to use as an infantry dragon, which other units didn't have access to, and even though a lot of people think that in this refined batch she got the short end of the stick, I think that she's still pretty decent. So Remote Breath did give her -1 special cooldown and also effective damage against dragons, and now with the weapon refined she's able to get +14 to all of her stats. She also had the guaranteed follow-up attack, and she was the second unit to have special cooldown -1 jump before unit's first attack after duo Ike, and she was also the first unit to have this Scal effect. It does have the resistance check, so that is something you'll have to keep in mind. And now with the weapon refined, she's able to get the distant counter effect. So this is actually huge for her because it frees her up from running distant counter in her slot A or in her Sacred Seal. And this means that she can stack up even more stats. And depending on what kind of different Sacred Seals we get in the game in the future, she's able to easily run that over running something like distant counter, which a lot of the other dragons will have to run. And then she has got flat damage reduction based on 20% of her resistance, which is godsend and definitely something she needed to function as a bulk unit. So flat damage reduction could be stacked up with Lagu's Friend, and it is always going to be her best option for tanking. And then at the end she's able to get 50% damage reduction piercing, which is alright. I'm not the biggest fan of it because at max investment you're going to be using her with Lagu's Friend, which gives you the full damage reduction piercing on your special triggers. So it's almost wasted in a way. Like, this design space could have gone into maybe giving her like follow-up scowl or just something that could help her tank better, but I guess it's going to be helping you at lower investment when you're not going to be foddering Lagu's Friend to her. She does have New Divinity as her slot B skill, but it's not even funny how much outgunned it is compared to the other options that you're able to run. So at max investment or high investment, I definitely would not recommend that skill, and there are just much better options you could run on her. So overall, Brave Tiki doesn't really get as many things as Chrom or Seliph, and she was definitely not in the place like those two, but flat damage reduction is just so helpful until we get some kind of counter to it inevitably, and distant counter being built into the weapon is also useful. So I don't really think that she is the worst out of this Choose Your Legends batch, mainly because she is an infantry unit and Lagu's Friend itself is such a good skill when you stack it up with the flat damage reduction that she's got in her weapon. And in a lot of ways, Brave Tiki is going to be depending on the skills in the future because she's got Scal built in her weapon, she's got the special jumping, the distant counter. So in the future, when we get better options, she's going to be easily able to slot those in for her build. So after weapon refine, you could try and run her with attack defense finish as the Sacred Seal. You don't really need distant counter anymore. And Iceberg could be run as the special because she's going to be hitting really hard with her resistance. And resistance boon is the best asset that you could have on her because she does have that flat damage reduction. And you also need that for the Scal effect in her weapon. And at higher investment, High Dragon Wall is definitely something you're able to run. And it's going to be better than New Divinity because you block the warping of the ranged enemies, which is a lot of good utility. So you could try and stack up that utility with Attack Resistance Ploy 3, and Dragon's Roar is an option now, which she can run to get that unpierceable damage reduction. And with Emblem Marth, you're able to lower the cooldown, and Null Counter Disrupt Echo is going to be her best attune skill And that's not something the other units from this refined batch or even Chooser Legend 6 really need to do because they just have better preferred skills than her, unfortunately. And like I said, Lagu's Friend 4 is going to be her best sloppy skill, so unfortunately Dragon's Roar doesn't really work out with it, and Glacies is something you can run with Emblem Ike to stack up the unpierceable damage reduction, and Lagu's Friend is going to be giving you that special jump, and it's also going to be giving you that flat damage reduction and the true damage, so she could hit really hard with it. And Breath of Life 4 is going to be giving her the healing, and it's going to be a way of taking on the pre-combat damage. Hardy Bearing is going to be helping against the Desperation nukes, and because of her high resistance, she can actually get attack resistance Scowl and get the double Scowl going. You're not going to be getting the Scowl on the follow-up attack, but you can still have double Scowl as an insurance in case you face any kind of enemy with special jumping for the anti-Scowl. So that is something you can do if you're trying to replace her attack resistance finish in the slot A, and Null Counter Disrupt Echo is again gonna be the best attune skill. And you could also try and run a bit of a meme build, I guess, with a triple Scowl. So even Res Wave D is gonna be giving you that Scowl, then you have the Scowl in the slot A, and then the Scowl in the weapon. So you can get that triple Scowl and the flat damage reduction stacking, but functionally, Breath of Life 4 is gonna be way better in the slot A, so you could definitely try and run that, but I just wanted to showcase this. Brave Female Byleth had the novelty as a ranged Vantage Sweeper when she came out, but that novelty faded off pretty quickly, and then we just had so many insane units that easily could survive her Divine Pulse. So this weapon refine unfortunately doesn't really fix a lot of issues for her. So Inner Wellspring did give her minus one special cooldown, and she did get the full null follow-up status, and it also has Time Pulse 4 built in it. It's kind of like mini Special Spiral in a way, but I mean, it's able to loop Divine Pulse, which is helpful. And now she's able to get plus 14 to all of her stats. And in the primary effect of the weapon, she's able to get flat damage reduction on foes' first attacks, depending on 20% of her speed. So in case she faces any kind of hardy bearing opponent, and if they're able to attack her, then at least I hope that the flat damage reduction along with Divine Pulse is going to be making her survive. And she also gets the Canto 1 status out of her weapon refine, so this does help her in the nuking. And then she gets 7 true damage, which is not much in the modern times when units can hit so hard. I mean, just look at this batch itself. We have got Brave Chrom and Brave Seliph with really high thresholds of true damage that they're able to get, but unfortunately not for Byleth. And then she has got the full tempo effect, which does help her in the nuking in the player phase because she's able to trigger Divine Pulse twice in a single round of combat, so that is actually pretty good. And then she gets the full damage reduction piercing on her special triggers, which is something that she really needed as a Vantage unit and also as a nuke. So this weapon refine does make her function a bit better as a nuke, which she didn't really have much going for before. And she could also function as a Vantage unit, but speed preempt is the only way to do it. And now we have got Brave Bernie, so Paranoia status is also a thing, but you'll have to give a lot of support with the drive null counter disrupt of Ice Stripe Felicia. So that's just a lot of things that other Vantage sweepers don't really have to do. Like Brave Marth and Attuned Erica, for example, they can just run null counter disrupt Echo as their attuned skill. So unfortunately, being a ranged flyer, Brave Byleth is at a very unfortunate time and place because she depends so much on her Divine Pulse, and she is susceptible to Scowl effect and Hush Spectrum, and she doesn't have the special jumping like her legendary version to help her with that. And because of being a ranged flyer, the options that she has is so limited, and it also has overlap with the weapon refine. Like, she doesn't really fully want attack speed mastery because she already has Canto in her weapon. She doesn't fully want resonance because she has the full null damage reduction on the special triggers. So there's just not a lot of things that she's able to do, and she's not able to function fully as a Vantage unit because hardy bearing is always going to be existing. And like I said, the failsafe of Brave Marth and Tuned Erica is going to be better. And you could try and use her with Brave Bernie and maybe run a different sloppy skill, but right now it isn't really present, and her slotty options are also going to be limited. So I feel like she got the short end of the stick out of this entire weapon refinery batch, and also for the Chooser Legend 6 batch. Plus speed IV is going to be needed on Brave Byleth because she's going to be living and dying by the speed checks which is going to be really hard, honestly, with the speed creep, but that's something you can try and do. And Emblem Celica could be run for the warping, so you could try and run that, but in the future we're probably going to be having better emblems for her, and she could function as a Vantage Sweeper, and she can also be run with Brave Bernie, like I said, but we don't really have a lot of options for that. And you could also use her as a player phase nuke, which is a bit boring, but now she's able to do it a lot better, and I kind of like it more than Vantaging with her, because this way she's able to trigger Divine Pulse and have the survivability, and she also has the full tempo. So with Hardy Bearing disabling the Emblem Ike's things, it is going to be making it easier for her to nuke. So I really like this, even though the pre-combat damage of Flared Spire and Occultist Strike is not as invincible as before with Breath of Life being available. But again, she doesn't have much options, and this is pretty much you could try and run on her. And Soaring Guidance can enable the warping for your allies, so it is going to be a really good skill, because you cannot really run Soaring Echo on her because she is going to be needing Divine Pulse at all times. Newer Keaton gets a surprisingly good weapon refine for a free-to-play unit, so Resolve Fang did give him +3 defense, and now he has got the updated Infantry Beast transformation, which lowers his true damage when the special triggers by 3 points, but it gives you the full tempo effect, which is really good to have. And now we have got the Beast Sacred Seal, so you could easily transform always. And now with the weapon refine, he's able to get +10 speed, defense, and resistance in combat, and he inflicts -10 defense on the foe in the combat. He also gets true damage based on 20% of his defense now, and this includes the AoE special. So this allows him to function as an AoE nuker if you really want to, and because he's a slow unit, he's going to be having the guaranteed follow-up attack. He also gets the attack defense null penalty, which frees him up from running attack defense unity, and it's also helpful as an AoE nuke. And then he gets flat damage reduction based on 15% of his defense, which is really good for tanking. And finally, what makes him amazing and kind of surprising unit is the Selfish Breath of Life 4.5 that he has got in his weapon. I say 4.5 because its range is 3 spaces from an ally, so you could be away from your allies and still get the effects out of it. And it's selfish because only Keaton is able to get the effects out of it and not the allies like the regular Breath of Life 4. But still, it's a good effect to have, and he's able to make use of it because of his HP and defense. So this is going to be making him a quite unique unit, and because of being a beast unit, he has got the full tempo effect, which allows him to function in the enemy phase really well now that he has got flat damage reduction. And again, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but Lagoo's Friend is going to be again really good for stacking up the flat damage reduction. And even if you don't want to use him as an enemy phase unit, you could still use him as a player phase AoE nuke, which is something that not a lot of beast units are able to do. So after the weapon refine, if you're going to be building him up, you can try and run Attack Defense Excel and Beast Threaten and Fierce Beast from Ictanir. You're definitely going to be needing Ictanir, and if you don't have Lagoo's Friend, then Attack Defense Bulwark 4 can be something that you could run in a slot B. So Attack Defense Excel can give you some flat damage reduction, which can help, and Fierce Beast is going to be giving you the full damage reduction piercing, and Beast Threaten is a lot better in a slot C. Don't run Breath of Life 4 because it doesn't stack with his weapon. Instead, run Beast Threaten or just any of the other skills that he can freely run compared to other units. And the only thing that you're going to be stacking up with Breath of Life 4 is the Failed Smoke Deep Wounds Reduction, which is not really worth compared to the Panic and the Time Pulse effect that you get out of Beast Threaten. So this is going to be the best slot C skill for him, and if you're going to be running him with Lagoo's Friend, then don't run him with Fierce Beast, instead run him with Bonfire or Ignis, because you need a 3 cooldown special, and Ignis could be run with Emblem Marth, and he could easily retaliate back with it, and Close Defense 4 is one of the better options for his slot A for completely ignoring any kind of visible buff of the melee foes, and it does help him tank, and Guard Attune skill can also help you if you're going to be melee tanking with Newer Keaton. And Lagoo's Friend gives him even more true damage and even more flat damage reduction, which helps you function really well with his already high defense and attack stat, and you could also use him as an AoE nuke. So with Solid Ground 4, he can stack up his visible attack, and even though you can use Beast Threaten with this kind of build, Infantry Pulse 4 is also a viable option so that he could also support your allies just in a different way with his high HP. and you could try and pre-charge this with your allies and simply go in and loop the AoE special, so Emblem Marth is going to be needed. And keep in mind that the true damage from his weapon does get added into the AoE specials. So this is going to be making him a pretty unique unit. I kind of wish that he had got Kanto built in his weapon, but still you could try and outsource it with something like Brave Female Robin that we now have access to. Even though we don't have the crystalline water version of Solid Ground, it is still a pretty good skill to be run because he already has the attack defense null penalty, so even though he doesn't cleanse it, he is not really affected that much by it because of having it built in his weapon. Even though Keaton doesn't really have a lot of resistance, he can still stack up a lot of flat damage reduction, and with Emblem Ike he can have even more unpierceable damage reduction, so he can easily tank the range threats with Distant Bonus Doubler as his slotty skill, and Lagoose Friend and Beast Threaten are pretty much going to be the best options for him after this weapon refine. And you can also run Null Counter Disrupt Echo, and you're easily able to pass on Distant Bonus Doubler and Lagoose Friend off of an attuned Erica, so that actually works out for him. Eitri was a pretty strong range flyer when she came out with the fixed Kanto 2, but as we started to get Kanto control and a lot of tanky units, her nuking just fell off, but now with the weapon refined she's able to bounce back, and she's actually able to function as a unique unit in Summoner Duels and also in Arena. So Grim Broker did give her +3 attack and also fixed Kanto 2 from turns 1 to 4. Unfortunately, that doesn't really change with the weapon refine, and now she's able to inflict -11+X on the attack and resistance debuff on the enemy and -10+XP debuff on the enemy. So this X is going to be depending on the number of foes in 3 spaces, including the target foe. And you're able to get a lot of debuffs out of this, and then she's got guaranteed follow-up attack and also true damage based on 15% of her attack, which does help in nuking, and she gets the standard 7 HP healing after the combat, which a lot of units do get with their weapon refines. But the unique thing about her is definitely the debuffs that she's able to do. So she's able to debuff the closest foes and the foes in 2 spaces of them, which is a huge range, and she's going to be debuffing -7 attack and resistance, and she's going to be inflicting the Sabotage status and the Schism status. So just as a recap, Schism status is going to be disabling the Triangle Adept Dual Strike and the Visible Pathfinder status. It doesn't disable Innate Pathfinder, so this is able to give her a niche in Summoner Duels S, where she's able to be effective against a lot of the dagger teams, and she's also able to function and counter the Battlecatcher teams, which are also going to be run in Summoner Duels S. And this can also be helpful in Arena with the Sabotage debuff that she's able to do. You're not going to be seeing a lot of the Visible Pathfinder effect in Arena, but that's mainly for Summoner Duels S. And then she gets an Excel skill built into her weapon, but instead of counting the spaces moved, instead she's going to be counting the number of bonus status effects active on her and the penalty status effects active on foe times 3. So she is able to have max 12 flat damage reduction on the regular attacks and on the special triggers of the enemy, just like the Excel skill. So this is actually going to be going really well with the damage reflection that she has got in her sloppy skill. So Divine Recreation 2 is going to be debuffing the foe's attack speed, defense, and resistance by -4, and now she's able to get 50% damage reduction piercing, which is always helpful being a ranged flyer. She also gets 50% damage reduction on foes' first attacks, including the brave hits, and she has got the full damage reflection including the other skills, so it can help her hit really hard on her follow-up attack with all of the damage reduction that she's able to have. So overall, I think that Eitri is a pretty unique and useful unit now for Summoner Duels S. I cannot wait to use her, and also for Arena and Arena Assault, because she does provide you that support and her nuking is a bit better and her survivability is also a bit better. And in case you're going to be facing Attuned Micaiah in Summoner Duels, then keep in mind that the Schism status is actually pretty low on the priority. Sabotage is quite high up, and you're probably going to be having any of these debuffs on the high priority, so Schism status is still going to be there for messing up the Visible Pathfinder status of dagger teams. Eitri does get Deadly Miasma as a remix skill, so you can definitely try and run it for getting the lull effect out of it, and you can also set up the haste terrain. So as long as you're not using Flared Mirror, you should be fine using Deadly Miasma for its terrain, and you could also use Glimmer as the special, but at a high investment you can definitely try and use her with Flared Mirror. And in Summoner Duels she could be used with Air Orders 4 so that she can get the charge status and also provide more support to her allies. So that way she's able to add more utility to her team, and there are not a lot of options for the slot A, so Flare Mirror at least lets you get the flame terrain up and then retreat with Canto 2. But let's be honest, against any kind of good team, you're going to be getting locked down because of Canto control. You could also use her in Arena as she is a legendary unit, so at max investment she can score as a 190 BST unit, and their soaring guidance is easily going to be much better than Deadly Miasma or really anything that you could run. Maybe in the future Ground Orders 4 comes out and that could be run, but right now this is going to be the best option. Let's try to end this video on a more positive note for female Byleth. So her legendary version also gets a weapon refine, and it's definitely better than her brave version. So her professorial guide did give her -1 special cooldown and also the full tempo effect, which was really unique for that time when she came out, but even now it can be helpful for nuking. And now she's able to get +16 to all of her stats in the combat. She also gets 30% damage reduction on foes' first attacks, including the brave hits, and now she's able to provide a wide range of support to allies in 3 rows and 3 columns centered on her, and she's able to give +4 to all of their stats and also give them the full tempo effect, which is again really unique. We have a lot of ways of getting full null follow-up, but not so much when it comes to the full tempo effect. So that can be helpful in Arena, and then she also gets true damage based on 20% of her speed, which again helps her with the nuking, and just like her brave version, she's able to get the null damage reduction on her special triggers, which is so needed for hitting hard. So now Goddess Bearer 2 is going to be having the +7 attack and speed buff, the null follow-up and the order status for the warping, and she's also able to get +4 to all of her stats in the combat. And like I said, the special jumping does help you trigger Ruptured Sky, which is going to be helping against the scowl effect, and that is one of the biggest weaknesses of legendary male Byleth, for which he can run Creation Pulse now. But female Byleth is able to have the unconditional scowl effect in the combat, which can definitely help her survive. Unfortunately, she doesn't really have Divine Pulse or the flat damage reduction of her brave version, which she would have liked a bit more for the survivability, but still, because of the full tempo effect and the pierceable damage reduction that she has got, she's able to trigger a 1 cooldown special twice in a single run of combat. So overall, I like this weapon refine for legendary female Byleth. She's able to function a bit better as a nuke, and she's also able to provide some unique support in the form of full tempo to a lot of allies in that range, and for arena usage, it is definitely going to be pretty nice. She gets attack speed finish as a remix skill, and this is easily the best slotty skill for her, giving her the true damage and the healing, and she's going to be triggering her specials quite a lot. And at budget, you could try and run Water Sweep as the slot B skill, so it could help if you don't want to run the Lull skill, and Blade Session could be useful for just stacking up the max offenses. But if you're going to be investing a bit more, then Occultist Strike is going to be the best slot B skill for stacking up more true damage, and the pre-combat damage can also help, and there are not many options for an infantry mage that already pierces the damage reduction with her special, so this is one of the options. And Bonus Doubler does work as a Sacred Seal because of her visible buffs, and Flare could be used as a special with Emblem Marth, so it's a 1 cooldown special and you get the special jumping from her remix skill, so that way you're able to easily trigger it and hopefully trigger it twice in a combat and also heal up HP. And I want to thank all of my YouTube members for their constant support, and you can click the link on your screen right now to check out my breakdown of the new Ice Stripe banner, and make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell, because YouTube sub boxes are about as functional as brave female Byleth after seeing her legendary version. So with that, I'll see you guys next time. Thanks so much for watching and have a great day.